Ladies and gentlemen, my name's Paul. Hopefully you're having an amazing day. Apologies for not being on camera for today's video, but I wasn't planning to record actually. But there are several very interesting stories that have surfaced, so I'm taking a few minutes out of my finishing a really big project, which is to do with Zen scaling, so you can check that video out. It should be up today, because I really wanted to talk about this stuff, because one of the subjects was that the RTX 3080 Ti, as well as super revisions of cards, are actually being postponed. Now, of course, the term postponed is kind of a bit of a weird term, because technically speaking, Nvidia didn't actually provide an official release date. They didn't say, guys, on the 28th of January, these GPUs will be available. Oops, sorry, our bad. No, they're going to be available at another date. Instead, these, of course, were internal targets, but we've been hearing an awful lot about these GPUs. And yeah, it was originally thought that the 3080 Ti was going to launch end of January, possibly in February. But yeah, now it just doesn't seem like this is happening. In fact, it seems that just the shortages have made Nvidia rethink their strategy, and instead, they are currently on hold. So this information comes to us via several places, techpowerup, videocards.com, as well as Gamers Nexus. In my own digging as well, I am definitely hearing that there are delays / something hinky is going on. The RTX 3090, up until recently, had been thought to be 20 gigabytes of memory with the same CUDA core count as the RTX 3090, but then there was some kind of rumors that we were looking at a 12 gigabyte model instead, and yet now we're seeing this information regarding a delay. And furthermore, Palette have several entries of the RTX 3080 Ti on the Euro-Asian Economic Commission, as well as the RTX 3060. So when you think about it in just the overall broader sense of things, I think this probably is for the best, because the 3090 obviously is a pretty damn expensive card. It's like 1,500 bucks. However, it is selling, sort of. I mean, when people can get hold of the cards. The RTX 3080 is, well, just always sold out, and it's pretty much like finding a nugget of gold walking down the street. So the RTX 3080 Ti had been basically created to fight up the the RX 6900 XT. In fact, even the pricing was said to be identical, $999.99 US dollars. So the 6900 XT is also extremely difficult to procure at the moment. So I guess Nvidia's thinking was, well, why would we want to release another card which is going to further frustrate people, because you know everyone is going to rush out and try and buy the RTX 3080 Ti just simply because, even if it was 5% faster, just the fact that it's a Ti model, people would just want it bad. And so yeah, I think that this kind of makes sense. And my personal opinion is that while the next couple of months are kind of just insane in technology, remember, AMD and Nvidia both said that inventory is going to be lean for the next several weeks. In other words, throughout Q1, which obviously the word lean is basically just saying, yeah, you can't buy crap. We do know that there are going to be lower end cards in Nvidia's lineup, such as the RTX 3060, and these are probably going to be easier to procure. Guess? Well, of course, wait and see, because ultimately it's just nuts. Like, trying to get any card at the moment. I mean, around Christmas, I think I was looking just out of curiosity. Um, and one of my friends was trying to grab an RTX 3060 Ti. So I was kind of helping him just look around, and I was just on different websites, and damn, like GTX 1650s were out of stock, GTX, 1660 whatevers, and like even the RX 580s, like everything was out of stock. It's absolutely crazy. So I think that this is probably the right way to go. As for the Super Series, I'm going to be curious when we actually see the release date then. Are we going to see something perhaps in Q2 or maybe even a little later? AMD have stated, of course, that the mid-range RDNA cards, which I guess will be the 6700 series, those are going to release in the next 6 months. Basically, they've said within the second half of 2021. So, yeah, pretty sucky for those who wanted to pick up a TI, but given the shortages, it's probably the most logical thing. Speaking of shortages and how they're kicking us in the shin at the moment, Momomo on Twitter has actually leaked the prices of the 11th generation Intel processors, and you can see them on screen yourself at the moment. Now, whether these actually end up being these prices or not, I think it's fair to say that these CPUs are not exactly cheap. So the K, of course, is the unlocked part, and the KF is basically the same thing, albeit with the iGPU disabled. So yeah, I mean, it doesn't necessarily affect you if you have a high performance GPU. The only negative is if you're, wanting to kind of swap your GPU out, or maybe you're having problems with it, or you're trying to do like a bad VGA BIOS flash or whatever, then it's nice to have an iGPU, at least in my opinion. But either way, the pricing of these CPUs is actually a little more expensive, to put it mildly, than what I was hoping. And given that AMD themselves have cranked up the price of several Zen SKUs, which I think that the 5600X, I think that the price raise on that hurt the most. Maybe that's just, to me, but like the motherboard prices of the 11th gen are just insane. We're seeing some boards, admittedly, these are the highest end boards from, the likes of MSI and Asus and whomever else. We're looking at prices of like 1,000 plus for these motherboards, which is absolutely just nuts. Like, it's just absolutely crazy that boards are costing that much. And yes, I do understand that, the VRM solutions, and they're creating the board with tons of layers and all that stuff. But even so, geez, just ow, just owie, just owie. Um, the Rocket Lake processors, I'm still kind of on the fence with. I've gone through that spiel several times now, but I do think that they'll be decent enough for gaming. The question is it going to be worth upgrading? If you're running, just for example, like a 3700X or a 9900K or something around there, I don't know. I don't know. I suspect many people are just going to say, screw it, I'm going to stick with whatever the hell I've got now until DDR5 releases. So maybe Rocket Lake and, even Zen 3 is not really hitting its stride necessarily simply because of the shortages, at least in my opinion. Couple of days ago, though, speaking of Intel, I was covering the fact that the next CEO is going to be Pat Gelsinger. So he's going to, of course, be replacing the current CEO, Bob Swan, and this is going to take place February 15th. And I was also reporting in that video that I'm hearing there are going to be some pretty large fundamental changes within Intel. Basically, large changes in management / division structures. But yeah, Apple obviously abandoned Intel, switching to M1. And of course, this is eventually going to affect AMD too because their own GPUs. So that's going to definitely hurt AMD's bottom line in the future. But long story short, there are some big players at the moment who are definitely eating into Intel's slice of the pie. For data center / servers, Intel basically had the entire market to itself with processors. But now AMD's EPYC are just kicking butt. Obviously, you've got the desktop. Well, yeah, it's not even worth discussing the desktop, and so on and so on and so on and so on. However, according to Pat Gelsinger, Intel has to be better at making CPUs than a lifestyle company. As you probably guessed, this is actually in reference to Apple. I'm going to read the entire quote. We, Intel, have to deliver better products to the PC ecosystem than anything possible that a lifestyle company could make. We have to be that good in the future. I don't necessarily think, though, that he's necessarily referring to just CPUs. Remember that Intel want to transform themselves. They don't just want to be a CPU company. In fact, when Pat was coming on board, he mentioned several times XPU. In other words, just anything to do with processing. Even my own conversations with Intel, it's very much the same thing. They don't just want to be the processor company anymore. They want you to be able to buy network solutions, SSDs, processors, of course, big or small. And naturally, they're getting into the GPU arena too. They've got the One API, which allows you to easily program either a CPU or GPU or whatever FPGA, if I can speak, and much easier, and obviously using the same API. So they are doing a lot to transform the company. The problem is that they've got a long road ahead. I think it's not just the products themselves, which we can argue all day long about whether one product is better than another product. I think also the issue is that a lot of people just don't like Intel. They feel that they are kind of the bad guys in the tech world, and people kind of they think of it like David and Goliath, and everyone cheers AMD when they kick Intel in the shin. It's that simple. It really is. And obviously, Intel does have fans, and I have nothing really against anyone at Intel. I think that the passion of the people there is pretty amazing, and I think the same thing for Nvidia and AMD and Microsoft. Like the people who work at the companies is, not necessarily the problem. I think that it's some of the, I guess you could say, culture which is cultivated in the companies, and I think that it's going to take a while for Intel to kind of break free of that, and I hope they do. For my mind, I look at companies like Intel and AMD and just think of the amazing impact they've had in the industry. And so my, you know, personal perspective on things, from my personal perspective, it's like when all of these companies are working the hardest to dethrone the other one, that's best for us. So yeah, hopefully Intel and their fighting words do actually end up meaning something rather than we just be in this situation where it's like, well, you can pick up the Ryzen 7000 or you can pick up this Ryzen 7000 or this Ryzen 7000 in a couple of years' time. Because let's face it, that is not particularly interesting and it doesn't necessarily mean the best for us as end users. With all of that said though, thank you very much for checking out the video. The normal stuff, if you have enjoyed it, like, share, comment of course, and subscribe. And I'll see you soon. Take care of yourselves. Bye for now.